It happened 7 months ago at the height of COVID in New York. So it was this very quiet environment and my contractions were pretty strong, but it took me immediately into the delivery room.
Bonjour et bienvenue chez Mother Stories, la communauté dédiée au bien-être des mamans et des mamans en devenir. Notre mission est de vous informer et de vous accompagner à chaque étape de votre maternité.
Grâce à des partages d'expériences uniques et authentiques, permettez à d'autres femmes de se sentir soutenues, comprises et rassurées dans cette folle aventure qu'est la maternité. Découvrez pour notre dernière Birthstory du mois de décembre, celle d'Alexandra qui a donné la vie à son 3e enfant au pic de la pandémie à New York. Un accouchement parfait et tout en douceur, malgré les conditions particulières liées au Covid.
Hi guys, so my name is Alex and I wanted to share my birth story on Mother Stories. I'm a mom of 3. I have a 5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and a now 7 months old. And I gave birth all 3 times in New York City. And for my last birth, it happened 7 months ago at the height of COVID in New York. So you can imagine that it was kind of an unusual time to give birth. And I know I'm obviously not the only one. But at the time, it was pretty fresh and there was very little that was known about the effects of COVID on pregnant women, on infants, on babies. And it just made the whole experience so much more bizarre and different. So for Noam, my third, I was actually triggered, induced by my OB because of COVID and because we didn't have family around. We couldn't just call a friend to come over and watch the 2 older kids. We decided it was safer for me to get induced so we would know the date that it would happen, so we could really prepare the childcare structure that would be needed for my older 2 kids to be cared for while we're at the hospital. So we decided on a date with my doctor and I went there in the morning, and it's kind of this soft induction that you do at your doctor's office. So it's not one of these things where you get hospitalized and you get the IV in and you wait for the contractions to start. It's this very soft one that may or may not work. So we didn't know that I was actually going to give birth that day. So I went in the morning, then my husband joined me a few hours later and started feeling some contractions, but nothing much, nothing that would be enough for me to actually go to the hospital. So I waited at the doctor's office and it was a very weird atmosphere. The office was empty because she wasn't seeing anyone except for her pregnant patients during COVID. And so my husband and I went for walks around the neighborhood. And it's this very specific neighborhood of New York next to the hospital, which during COVID is not the nicest, warmest, fun place to be. And it was very windy and kind of rainy at the same time. And it's almost out of a movie. Everyone was wearing a mask. And now it's very standard, obviously, but it just felt very different. And so we're walking around waiting for the contractions to pick up, and we ended up going back to the doctor's office after walking for about 2 hours because the contractions were getting closer and closer. And I was checking the app that I was using to monitor those contractions, and I was seeing that they were getting, about 2-3 minutes apart. They weren't so strong, but they were very close. And I've done it twice before with my other kids, so I just thought, okay, maybe we should go back. So we went back to my doctor's office, and she told me it was 3 centimeters dilated at that point, which is enough to actually go to the hospital. And so we went across the street because her office is just across from NYU Langone where I gave birth. So across the street, went over there. And when I went there, I was kind of thinking, maybe they'll send me back because my first 2 births, I went to the hospital, wasn't dilated enough, was sent back home, and ended up having to return later. So I thought, okay, 3rd birth is going to be the same. And I got there and they do the whole COVID screening. They don't test you, but they take your temperature and your spouse's temperature. And we went up and it was so quiet. The hospital was so calm. Because of COVID, there are no visitors, right? So there's no movement of people like you typically see in the maternity ward. So it was this very quiet environment and my contractions were pretty strong, but they took me immediately into the delivery room. So they didn't take me to triage. They didn't take me for any kind of test. They said, okay, third kid, 3 minutes apart contractions, you're going to the delivery room. I was like, okay. So I go in there and the nurses like undress me, whatever, I get ready. And then I had to wait for the epidural. My whole thing with my third pregnancy was that I was so worried that I wouldn't make it on time for the epidural, because typically third pregnancies, third birth, it goes really fast. So I waited for the epidural and I think it took about 30 minutes for the epidural to come and to put it. I think the whole thing took about 45 minutes to an hour until it was actually put on my back. And it was actually really nice because the doctor who came to put the epidural came in and heard me and my husband speak in Hebrew. So he felt compelled to do this, sing this prayer, this Jewish prayer for us as a good luck kind of message to us. And it was really sweet because we were like, finally I had the relief of the epidural. I was feeling better. And he just sang this song with this beautiful, beautiful voice. And it was really unexpected. And we're like, wow, thank you. Thank you for that. And he left. I was feeling better. And by that time I was already 8 centimeters dilated. So I went from 3 an hour previously at the doctor's to 8 in the span of an hour. So I got the epidural. I was like, okay, now I feel better. And epidural typically slows down your labor, which is what happened. The labor slowed down a little bit and my doctor came in. She's the best doctor in the world, Dr. Green in New York City. If you need an OB, she's incredible. She came in and she knew me, right? It's the 3rd time that she was delivering me. So she knew it would be an easy, fast birth. And she's just this amazing presence and the kind of doctor that just stays with you the entire time. If I had to labor all night, she would be staying with me all night. And she just turned on the TV and started chatting with me, and she watched Jeopardy and she started like just playing and answering questions. It was really funny, just typical of her personality. And it's just the best because it distracts you from what is actually happening. But I was just quietly watching TV and then I started feeling very tired, dozing off. And then I remembered that's usually when I'm just about to give birth, because it happened to me 2 times prior too. And the doctor looks at me and says, are you okay? And then she checks me. She said, okay, you're 10 centimeters dilated, let's go. And she gets me ready and I push like, I don't know, 3 times and the baby was out and it was a boy, which we didn't know. It was a surprise. It was the first time that we didn't know the gender of the baby and we were so excited and obviously so happy that it went well and that it was so fast and easy, especially in the context of COVID and everything happening. It was a big relief. And yeah, like I started having contractions around 5 p.m. and he was born at 7:40 p.m. So in less than 3 hours, got to the hospital, dilated super fast and delivered the baby like this. So it was super easy. I'm so grateful. And I know I'm very lucky that it went so well. And the recovery was good. You know, it was again in this very empty hospital. It felt amazing to be, to have this quiet and this sense of peace in the midst of COVID chaos. The kids were home. They couldn't come and visit us, unfortunately, because of COVID. And my husband spent 1 night with me out of the 2 that I spent in the hospital. I had my own room, which again was great, thanks to social distancing. Typically in New York, it's hard to get a private room. So we got lucky this time because of COVID that everyone was spread out. We got our peace and quiet with our newborn Noam. So it was amazing. Honestly, the dream birth, I have nothing to say but good things about it and wish it to every mom out there. So thank you for listening.
Merci de nous avoir écoutés.
Si vous aimez notre contenu, s'il vous a aidé à un moment donné, likez, commentez et partagez-le à vos proches.
Si vous avez envie d'aborder un sujet en particulier, témoignez et partagez votre histoire à votre tour. Écrivez-nous sur motherstories.ch.